The holographic display flickered with images of burning Earth ships. Princess Aranya stood on the bridge of the Valorian flagship, her silver eyes reflecting the destruction below. Around her, military officers laughed and pointed at the screen. They found the human resistance amusing, like watching children play with wooden swords. "Another pathetic attempt," Commander Vexra said, his voice thick with contempt. He was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed under the bridge lights. "These humans cannot even coordinate a basic defensive formation." Aranya said nothing. She watched the data streams flowing across her tablet. Earth had lost another border station, 17 ships destroyed, hundreds of human soldiers dead. The Valorian Empire had conquered 73 worlds before reaching Earth's solar system. Each conquest had been swift and absolute, but something about the humans troubled her. They kept fighting. Every other species had surrendered after the first major defeat. The humans just kept coming back despite terrible losses. "Your Highness," Vexra approached her, bowing slightly. "The demonstration at Kepler 9 station is prepared. We will show the entire galaxy what happens when primitives challenge the Valorian Empire." "Is this necessary?" Aranya asked. "We have already proven our superiority." Vexra's face hardened. "The humans refuse to accept reality. They need a lesson they cannot ignore. We will broadcast their humiliation across every system. When the galaxy sees their champions broken, Earth will finally submit." The neutral station Kepler 9 floated in deep space, a diplomatic hub where dozens of species gathered to witness what the Valorians called the final demonstration. Aranya's shuttle docked at the main bay. She could feel the anticipation in the air as delegates from across the galaxy assembled in the central arena. The arena was enormous, designed for large-scale exhibitions. Thousands of spectators filled the stands. Holographic cameras hovered everywhere, ready to broadcast to billions of viewers. This was meant to be entertainment and warning combined. Major Deho represented Earth's United Defense Force. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. Aranya watched him enter the arena, surrounded by Valorian guards who towered over him. He walked with straight shoulders despite the hostile crowd. "The humans have accepted our challenge," Vexra announced, his voice amplified across the arena. "Single combat. Their best warrior against 30 of our elite commandos. When we finish with him, Earth will understand its place in this galaxy." The crowd roared with approval. Aranya noticed that Deho did not flinch at the noise. He simply stood there waiting. "We select our champion," Deho said quietly into the microphone. His voice barely carried over the crowd noise. "Corporal Minho of the Special Air Service." A human walked onto the arena floor. Aranya leaned forward, confused. This was Earth's champion? The man was average height for a human, perhaps 5 feet 10 inches. He wore simple combat fatigues without decoration. His face was calm, almost blank. He carried basic equipment, nothing compared to Valorian technology. The crowd's laughter was deafening. Even Aranya's own advisors chuckled behind their hands. Vexra looked insulted, as if the humans were mocking him by sending such an unremarkable warrior. "This is their best?" Vexra asked loudly. "This little creature?" Minho said nothing. He simply looked around the arena, his dark eyes taking in every detail. Aranya noticed something odd. While everyone else was focused on Vexra, Minho was studying the exits, the camera positions, the layout of the observation decks. He was already planning. "The combat will take place on Thalros 4, Vexra continued. "An abandoned mining colony. 30 of my commandos against 1 human. Survival scenario. No restrictions. We will broadcast everything live." Deho stepped forward. "What are the victory conditions?" "Victory?" Vexra laughed. "The human survives 12 hours and Earth gains respect. When he falls, as he will within minutes, Earth submits to our rule. These are the terms." "Agreed," Deho said immediately. Aranya saw Minho's expression flicker just for a moment. Was that a smile? It disappeared so quickly she might have imagined it. The diplomatic meeting dissolved into chaos as species representatives argued about the terms. Some thought it was unfair. Others insisted it was too generous to the humans. Through it all, Aranya watched Minho. He stood quietly in the corner, checking his equipment with practiced efficiency. She approached him, her guards moving to block her. She waved them aside. "You understand what you face?" she asked in English. The Valorians had mastered most major languages of their conquered worlds. Minho looked up at her. His eyes were sharp, intelligent. Yes, Your Highness, 30 elite commandos. They have trained for centuries. They have technology beyond your understanding. They have killed thousands of warriors from dozens of worlds. Yes, Your Highness. You will die. Minho's face remained neutral. Maybe. You are not afraid? Fear is useful, Minho said carefully. It keeps you alert. But it should not control your decisions. Aranya found herself curious despite herself. Why did they send you? Surely Earth has larger warriors, stronger fighters. Strength is not everything, Minho said. He finished checking his equipment and stood. Your commandos are powerful, but power makes you predictable. And you are not predictable? No, Your Highness. I am not. The transport ship carried them to Thalros 4 the next day. The moon was cold and barren, covered in abandoned industrial facilities. Rusted machinery stretched for miles. Underground tunnels connected the old mining operations. It was a dead world, perfect for what the Valorians had planned. Aranya watched from her flagship orbiting above. The command center was filled with officers eager to witness the entertainment. Screens showed every angle of the moon's surface. The 30 Valorian commandos were already assembled, checking weapons and armor. Minho was given 12 hours head start. Standard survival pack. Basic weapons. A combat knife and a simple rifle. Nothing compared to Valorian plasma weapons and energy shields. He will not last an hour, one of Aranya's advisors said confidently. The humans always surprise us with their stubbornness, another replied. He might hide for 3 or 4 hours before they find him. Begin the countdown, Vexra ordered from the surface. Minho was dropped alone at the southern edge of the industrial zone. The cameras captured him looking at the gray sky, then at the ruins around him. He picked up his pack and started walking into the maze of collapsed buildings and twisted metal. 12 hours until the hunt begins, Vexra announced. Let the human run. Let him hide. It will make his capture more satisfying. Aranya watched Minho on the screen. He moved with purpose, not panic. He was not running randomly. He was studying the terrain, testing surfaces, examining structures. Whatever he was planning, it was already in motion. The galaxy was watching. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds tuned in to see Earth's warrior face impossible odds. The Valorian propaganda machine had promised a spectacle. They had promised to break humanity's spirit once and for all. But as Aranya watched Minho disappear into the industrial ruins, she felt something unexpected. Not pity, not amusement. Something else entirely. Doubt. The selection room on Earth had been quiet 3 days earlier. Major Deho sat across from Minho in a gray concrete building somewhere in England. Rain hammered against the windows. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on both men. You understand what this means, Deho said. It was not a question. Minho nodded slowly. They want to show. They want to prove humans are weak. Yes, and if you fail, Earth becomes a Valorian colony. Billions of people enslaved. Deho pushed a folder across the table. These are their commandos. Enhanced genetics. Centuries of combat experience. Technology that makes our best equipment look like stone tools. Minho opened the folder. He studied the images carefully. The Valorian commandos were impressive, no doubt. But he had learned long ago that impressive did not mean unbeatable. Why me? He asked. Deho smiled grimly. Because you passed selection when everyone said you would not. Because you survived missions that killed men twice your size. Because you think differently than everyone else. Minho remembered selection, the Brecon beacons in winter, carrying equipment through freezing mountains while instructors watched for weakness. He remembered the psychological tests, designed to break candidates. He remembered the moment he realized that physical strength mattered less than mental strength. I cannot promise victory, Minho said honestly. I know, but you will not quit. That is what matters, Deho stood. The Valorians think war is about power. They have never faced someone who understands that war is about will. Now, on Thalros 4, Minho moved through the abandoned industrial complex with calm focus. His 12 hours of preparation time was precious. Most warriors would use it to hide. Minho was doing something else entirely. He studied the environment like a scientist. The collapsed factory buildings created natural choke points. The underground tunnels offered escape routes but also potential traps. The old machinery could be useful if positioned correctly. Every detail mattered. Back on the Valorian flagship, Princess Aranya watched the human work. She saw him testing metal beams for stability. examining electrical conduits, collecting wire and debris. Her advisors were bored, expecting him to simply hide and hope. "What is he doing?" she asked quietly. "Wasting time," one advisor said dismissively. "He should be finding a place to hide." But Aranya was not convinced. She had studied military strategy since childhood. This human was not behaving like prey. He was behaving like someone preparing an ambush. The 12 hours passed slowly. The galaxy watched as Minho moved through the ruins with methodical precision. He did not rest. He did not panic. He just worked, setting up something the cameras could not quite capture. Commander Vexra and his 30 elite commandos waited at the northern landing zone. They were eager, confident. This was supposed to be a simple hunt. The human would run. They would find him. The galaxy would witness Valorian superiority. "Time," Vexra announced as the countdown reached 0. "Begin the hunt." The commandos spread out in coordinated teams. 6 groups of 5, each with advanced sensors and weapons. They moved with professional efficiency, covering ground quickly. Their armor protected them from the cold. Their sensors could detect heat signatures from miles away. "Target acquired," one team leader reported within minutes. "Southern sector moving through the industrial zone." "Close in," Vexra ordered. "Capture him alive if possible. Dead if necessary, but make it slow enough for the broadcast." Aranya watched the tactical display. The red dots representing commandos converged on the blue dot representing the human. It looked decisive. Final. The crowd in her command center was already celebrating. Then something strange happened. The first team entered a collapsed factory where Minho's heat signature had been detected. The building was 3 stories of twisted metal and broken concrete. Perfect place for an ambush, but the Valorians were not concerned. 5 armed commandos against 1 human with basic equipment. "Contact in 30 seconds, the team leader reported. "Thermal shows him in the central chamber." 20 seconds later, their communication went dead. Not static. Not fighting. Just silence. Vexra frowned. "Team 1 report, nothing." "Team 1 respond immediately." Still nothing. The command center on the flagship went quiet. Aranya leaned forward, studying the screens. The other teams were redirecting toward the factory. "Probably equipment failure," an advisor suggested nervously. "All 5 suits simultaneously?" Aranya asked. "Unlikely." Team 2 reached the factory entrance. They moved carefully now, weapons raised. The building interior was dark, full of shadows and debris. Their helmet cameras broadcast everything. They found Team 1 in the central chamber. All 5 commandos were unconscious, stripped of weapons and communication equipment. They were tied together with their own gear, positioned in the center of the room like a monument. On the metal wall above them, someone had carved words with a plasma cutter. 30 down, 28 to go. The command center erupted in confused shouting. How had 1 human defeated 5 elite commandos without firing a shot? Without alerting anyone? Without even appearing on camera? Vexra's face was dark with anger. "Find him now!" But Minho was already gone. The thermal signature they had followed was a decoy. Heat packs arranged to fool their sensors. While they had converged on the factory, he had moved deeper into the industrial complex. Aranya began to understand. This human was not fighting like a Valorian. He was not using superior force. He was using the environment, psychology, and patience. He was fighting like someone who had spent his life as the smaller, weaker, underestimated opponent. "Who trained him?" she asked Deho over the communication channel. "The Major was watching from Earth. The mountains trained him," Deho replied. "The cold, the hunger, the exhaustion. We do not build warriors in laboratories, Your Highness. We forge them through hardship." Team 3 tried to track Minho through the underground tunnels. Their sensors picked up movement ahead. They rushed forward, expecting to corner their prey. Instead, they found a tunnel rigged to collapse. As they entered, the supports gave way. No one was killed, but all 5 were trapped under debris, their expensive armor now a prison. Minho had calculated the collapse perfectly, dangerous enough to disable them but not deadly. "He is playing with us," Vexra snarled. "No," Aranya said softly. "He is fighting smart." "There is a difference. Team 4 and Team 5 joined together for safety. 10 commandos moving as one unit. Surely 10 trained warriors could not be defeated by 1 human. They entered an old processing plant. The building was massive, filled with industrial machinery and catwalks. Their sensors detected movement on the upper levels. Minho did not hide. He stood on a catwalk, clearly visible. The commandos raised their weapons, but he had already anticipated their response. As they fired, he cut the catwalk supports. The structure collapsed onto them in a cascade of metal and concrete, again carefully calculated. Painful, disabling, but not lethal. 20 left, someone on the flagship whispered. Vexra was no longer smiling. The easy hunt had become a nightmare. The human was not just surviving. He was winning. Aranya studied recordings of each engagement. She began to see the pattern. Minho never fought fairly. He never gave the commandos what they expected. He used surprise, terrain, and their own assumptions against them. "This is your Special Air Service?" she asked Deho. "This is one man from the SAS," Deho corrected. "We have thousands more." The broadcast was still live. The galaxy was no longer laughing. Species across hundreds of worlds watched in stunned silence as one human systematically dismantled the Valorian elite forces. In the ruins of Thalros 4, Minho moved like a ghost. He was tired, hungry, and wounded from his own trap deployments. But he did not stop. Could not stop. He carried the weight of his world on his shoulders, and he refused to let it fall. 6 hours into the hunt, 15 Valorian commandos remained operational. Vexra ordered them to regroup and hunt as a single unit. No more small teams. No more division, but this was exactly what Minho wanted. 15 commandos together meant 15 sets of equipment to exploit. 15 minds thinking the same way. 15 targets moving predictably. As night fell over Thalros 4, Princess Aranya realized something that changed everything she thought she knew about warfare. The Valorian Empire had never fought someone like this because they had never needed to. They had always been the stronger force. They had always been the ones with superior technology and numbers. They had never faced someone who had spent their entire existence as the underdog, learning to win through cunning and determination rather than raw power. And that, she realized, made all the difference. Dawn broke cold over Thalros 4. The gray sun cast long shadows across the industrial wasteland. Inside the Valorian flagship command center, Princess Aranya had not slept. She could not look away from the screens showing the moon below. 15 Valorian commandos remained active. They had regrouped at an old refinery in the center of the industrial zone. Commander Vexra paced among them, his pride wounded by the previous day's failures. "We have been too cautious," Vexra told his remaining warriors. "The human is clever, yes, but he is still just one small creature with primitive weapons. We move as one unit. We sweep every building. We end this humiliation." On the screens, Aranya watched the commandos prepare. Their armor was scratched and dented from the previous encounters. Some were limping. Others looked exhausted. But they were still dangerous, still elite warriors with centuries of training. Somewhere in the ruins, Minho was resting. The cameras had lost track of him 6 hours ago. He had found an underground maintenance room, hidden deep in the tunnel system. The room was cold and dark, but it provided shelter. He sat against the concrete wall, eating from his survival rations. His body ached. The traps he had set required physical effort, and he was only human. But his mind was clear. He reviewed his mental map of the complex, calculating where the commandos would search next. The Valorian approach was predictable. They thought in terms of sectors and coverage patterns. They would sweep systematically, using their superior technology to scan each building. It was logical and efficient. It was also exactly what Minho expected. Target could be anywhere in a 50-square-mile area, a Valorian tactical officer reported on the flagship. Thermal sensors are unreliable due to industrial heat residue. Motion detectors are picking up false readings from structural collapse. Then we search everything, Vexra said firmly. Start with the southern factories and work north. Aranya watched the blue dot representing Minho appear on the tactical display. He was moving again, leaving his hiding spot. But he was not running away from the commandos. He was moving toward them. "He is insane," one of her advisors muttered. "Or strategic," Aranya replied quietly. The 15 commandos entered the southern factory complex in tight formation. They moved professionally, covering each other's blind spots. Their weapons were ready. Their sensors were active. They expected ambush at every corner. What they found instead was silence. The factory was enormous, a maze of assembly lines and loading bays. Rust covered everything. Broken windows let in the cold morning light. The commandos' boots echoed on the metal floors. "Spread out," Vexra ordered. "Search every room." They divided into 3 teams of 5, each taking a different section of the factory. On the flagship, Aranya watched the helmet camera feeds from each soldier. She saw empty rooms, collapsed ceilings, and abandoned machinery. Then in the corner of one screen she saw something move. Just a flicker, a shadow crossing between 2 machines. So fast the commandos did not notice it. But Aranya noticed. "Team 2, she said into the communication channel. "Behind you, northeast corner." But her warning came too late. The lights went out, all of them, simultaneously. The factory plunged into darkness. The commandos' night vision activated, turning their view into shades of green. That was when Minho struck. He had studied their equipment carefully. He knew their armor had sophisticated sensors but also weaknesses. The night vision was powerful but could be overloaded. The communication systems were encrypted but used predictable frequencies. He had spent hours setting up this trap. Wires stretched between machines at throat height, debris positioned to create false paths, and something special he had built from scavenged equipment. A flash device. Not an explosive, just a chemical reaction that produced intense light for 3 seconds. 3 seconds was all he needed. The flash blinded the night vision systems. The commandos stumbled, disoriented. In that moment of chaos, Minho moved through them like a shadow. He was not trying to kill them. Just disable them. A strike to the joint where armor was weakest. A wire pulled tight around an ankle. Equipment yanked free. He moved with brutal efficiency, using their temporary blindness against them. When the light faded and their vision cleared, 3 commandos were down. 2 more were tangled in wire, struggling. The remaining team members spun around, weapons raised, but Minho was already gone. "Impossible," someone on the flagship whispered. "Not impossible," Aranya said. "Just unexpected," Vexra was furious. All teams converge on the factory. Now, the remaining commandos rushed toward their companions. But as they moved through the factory floor, more of Minho's preparations became apparent. Doors that should have been open were sealed. Paths that looked clear were blocked. They were being herded like animals into a maze. Team 3 found themselves in a loading bay. The large room had high ceilings and multiple exits. It seemed safe. Then the exits began to close. Heavy metal doors, pulled shut by counterweights that Minho had carefully rigged. The commandos rushed to stop them, but they were too slow. Within seconds, they were trapped. "Blast through the walls," Vexra ordered. "Negative," Team 3 leader responded. "Plasma weapons at full power would destabilize this structure. We would bring the ceiling down on ourselves." Minho had chosen his trap locations perfectly. "Fine," Vexra snarled. "We will cut you out. Hold position." But holding position meant 7 commandos were now stuck in one place, not searching. Minho was not just defeating them. He was removing them from the battle without firing a shot. 8 commandos remained mobile. They moved together now, refusing to be separated. They entered a warehouse carefully, checking every corner. This time, Minho did not hide. He stood on a loading platform 20 feet above them, clearly visible. In his hands was a Valorian plasma rifle taken from a defeated commando. "Contact," one commando shouted. They raised their weapons, but Minho fired first. Not at them. At the supports holding up massive storage containers on the level above. The containers fell like an avalanche. Thousands of pounds of metal and machinery crashed down. The commandos scattered, diving for cover. Some made it. Others were pinned under debris. Aranya watched in amazement. The human had not just survived. He had turned the battlefield into his own weapon. Every building, every structure, every piece of abandoned equipment was now a potential threat. "How many remain?" she asked her tactical officer. 5 mobile commandos. 7 trapped but unharmed. 3 injured but stable. 15 total still alive and undead. "No, Your Highness." The human could have killed them easily. He is choosing not to. This fact disturbed Aranya more than the defeats themselves. Minho was not killing Valorian commandos because he did not need to. He was proving a point, showing that he could win without matching their brutality. Vexra was nearly incoherent with rage. "I will kill him myself. All remaining commandos, with me." The 5 mobile warriors followed their commander into the heart of the industrial complex. They moved as a tight unit, weapons covering every angle. They would not be surprised again, but Minho was not planning surprise. He was planning exhaustion. For the next 3 hours, he led them on a chase through the ruins. He appeared briefly, then vanished. He fired a few shots, then retreated. He was always just ahead of them, just out of reach. The commandos were tiring. Their armor was heavy. Their weapons were powerful but also used significant energy. They had been hunting for 18 hours with minimal rest. Minho, meanwhile, had prepared supply caches throughout the complex. Water, food, ammunition. He would stop for 5 minutes at each cache, rest and resupply, then continued the chase. "He is running," Vexra insisted, though he was breathing hard. "We are winning." But Aranya saw the truth. The human was not running. He was drawing them away from their trapped companions, isolating them, wearing them down. Finally, as the sun began to set on the second day, Minho led them to an old power plant at the edge of the complex. The building was massive, filled with generators and transformers that had not run in decades. The 5 commandos and Vexra entered cautiously. They expected another trap. What they found instead was the human waiting for them in the central generator room. He stood on a catwalk above the main floor. He was dirty, tired, and visibly injured. His left arm was bleeding. His face was streaked with dust and sweat, but his eyes were clear and focused. "Surrender," Vexra demanded. "You have fought well, but this is over." Minho looked down at them. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. "You are right," he said in clear but accented Valorian. "It is over." Then he dropped something from his hand. It was a detonator rigged from Valorian equipment. The generator room had one structural weakness, one support column that held up the eastern wall. Minho had spent 4 hours the previous night rigging that column with carefully placed charges. The explosion was not large, just enough to crack the column. The eastern wall began to collapse. Not violently, but steadily. The commandos had 3 seconds to decide: stay and fight or run for the exits. They chose survival. All 6 Valorians rushed for the doors as tons of concrete began to fall. They made it out. Barely. The power plant collapsed behind them into a pile of rubble and dust. But when they looked back, the human was gone. He had escaped through the tunnels beneath the plant. Night fell over Thalros 4 for the second time. The industrial complex looked like a war zone. Collapsed buildings, scattered equipment, and exhausted Valorian commandos spread across 50 square miles of ruins. Princess Aranya sat in her command center, watching multiple screens. Her advisors had grown quiet. The mood had shifted from confidence to concern. What was supposed to be a quick demonstration had become something else entirely. Commander Vexra stood among his remaining warriors. 6 were still mobile. The others were either trapped in collapsed structures or recovering from injuries. All were exhausted. These were elite commandos who had conquered dozens of worlds, and one human was making them look foolish. "We rest for 2 hours, Vexra decided. Then we resume the hunt." Aranya opened a private channel to Major Daiho on Earth. "Your warrior is remarkable," she said. "He is doing his duty." Daiho replied simply. "You knew he could do this?" "I knew he would not quit. The rest is just him being himself." Aranya switched her attention to the search for Minho's heat signature. The sensors had lost him again. He was somewhere in the underground tunnels, invisible to their technology. But she had been studying his patterns. She was beginning to understand how he thought. He was not random. Every move had purpose. Every trap had layers. He was fighting a different kind of war than the Valorians had ever experienced. She had her technical team pull up every recorded engagement. She watched each one 3 times, studying the human's tactics. What she saw was mastery of asymmetric warfare. Minho used speed when he needed escape, patience when he needed surprise, violence when necessary, mercy when possible. "Why does he not kill them?" one advisor asked. "He could have eliminated all 30 by now." Aranya thought she understood. Because killing them would make him like them. He is proving humans are different, better. Deep in the tunnels beneath the industrial complex, Minho sat in darkness. His left arm was bandaged with torn fabric from his uniform. The wound was not deep, just a cut from a sharp piece of metal during his escape from the power plant. It would heal. He was more concerned about his ammunition. The rifle he had taken from the first commandos was running low on charge. His combat knife was still sharp. His mind was still clear. But he was human, and humans had limits. He thought about his training. The instructors in the Brecon beacons had pushed candidates beyond what seemed possible. Carry this weight up this mountain. Navigate in darkness with no equipment. Survive on minimum food and water. The purpose was not to create super soldiers. It was to create soldiers who understood their own limits and pushed past them anyway. Minho checked his watch. 2 hours until the commandos would resume hunting. He had time to prepare the next phase. He moved through the tunnels carefully. His map of the underground system was detailed now. He had explored these passages during his preparation time, memorizing every branch and dead end. The Valorians had sensors, but sensors could not replace knowledge. He emerged in an abandoned warehouse on the northern edge of the complex. This building was special. It had multiple levels, good sight lines, and only 2 entrances. If he was going to make a stand, this was the place. But Minho was not planning to make a stand. He was planning something else. As the 2-hour rest period ended, Vexra gathered his remaining mobile commandos. "New strategy," he announced. "We stop chasing him. We make him come to us." "How?" one commando asked. "We have 9 warriors trapped in various locations. The human has been careful not to kill anyone. This suggests he has some sense of honor. We will use that against him." Aranya listened to this plan with growing unease. "You plan to use your own soldiers as bait?" "Whatever works," Vexra replied coldly. "We broadcast a message. Tell the human we will execute 1 prisoner every hour until he surrenders." "You cannot do that," Aranya said sharply. "It violates every rule of combat honor." "Your Highness, with respect, we are far past honor. This human has humiliated the Valorian Empire. I will do whatever necessary to end this." "No," Aranya said firmly. "I forbid it." The command center fell silent. A princess overruling a military commander was unusual. Vexra's face darkened with anger, but he could not disobey a direct order from royalty. "Then what do you suggest, Your Highness?" he asked with barely controlled rage. Before Aranya could answer, one of the trapped commandos sent an emergency signal. His name was Krell, pinned under debris in a collapsed factory. The signal indicated he was injured and running out of air in his damaged suit. "We must rescue him," Vexra said. "All commandos to his location." "It could be another trap," an advisor warned. "I know, but we cannot leave him to die." The 6 mobile commandos moved toward Krell's location. They were cautious, expecting ambush at every step. But they reached the collapsed factory without incident. They found Krell buried under concrete and metal beams. His armor had protected him from being crushed, but one leg was trapped. His suit had been damaged by the collapse, and the life support system was failing. As the commandos worked to free their companion, they did not notice the figure watching from the shadows of a nearby building. Minho had been tracking the rescue operation. He could have attacked while they were distracted. 6 targets focused on one task, vulnerable to ambush. It would have been easy. Instead, he waited. When the commandos finally freed Krell, they carried him toward the extraction point. His injured leg made walking impossible. They moved slowly, carefully, protecting their wounded companion. That was when Minho appeared. He stepped out of the shadows, rifle aimed but not firing. The commandos immediately took defensive positions, weapons raised. For a long moment, nobody moved. "Let me help," Minho said in Valorian. "What?" Vexra demanded. "His leg is broken. You are carrying him wrong. You will cause more damage." Vexra laughed bitterly. "You want to help us? Why?" "Because he needs help." The standoff continued. On the flagship, Aranya watched with fascination. This made no sense. The human should attack or run. Instead, he was offering medical assistance to his enemies. "Let him approach," Krell said weakly. His pain was evident even through the radio. "Are you insane?" Vexra asked. "He could have killed all of us many times. He chooses not to." "Let him help." Slowly, Minho walked forward. The commandos kept their weapons trained on him, but they allowed him to approach. He knelt beside Krell and examined the injured leg carefully. "Compound fracture," Minho said, "but not severe. You need to immobilize it before transport." He began using materials from his pack to create a splint. His hands moved with medical training precision. "Why do you do this?" Krell asked quietly. "You are a soldier. I am a soldier. We fight because we must, but we do not have to be cruel." "You are making a mistake," Vexra said, "showing us mercy. We will use it against you." Minho finished the splint and stood. "Maybe, but I will still sleep tonight knowing I did the right thing." He started to walk away, back toward the shadows. "Wait," Krell called. "Why do you fight?" "Truly?" Minho paused. "Your empire conquers because you are strong. You fight because you want to. We fight because we have to. That is the difference between us. That is why you will lose." Then he vanished into the ruins. The commandos stood in stunned silence. Even Vexra had no response. On the flagship, Princess Aranya's understanding of humanity shifted completely. These were not primitive savages. They were warriors with philosophy, with honor, with principles that they maintained even under impossible pressure. "Replay that conversation," she ordered her staff. "I want to study his exact words." She watched it 3 times. Each time she noticed something new. The human was not just fighting for survival. He was fighting for an idea. The idea that strength without mercy was not strength at all. That winning was not the same as being right. The Valorian Empire had built itself on conquest and domination. They had never questioned whether that was correct. They simply assumed that power justified their actions. But this one human, tired and wounded and outnumbered, was showing them a different way. A way where strength protected rather than destroyed. Where victory did not require cruelty. Aranya looked at the tactical display. 6 mobile commandos, 9 trapped but alive, 15 total. 1 human who refused to kill them. "Your Highness," her chief advisor said carefully, "perhaps we should reconsider this entire demonstration." "No," Aranya said firmly. "We let it continue. But not because I want the human to lose, because I want to see what he does next." The galaxy was watching. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. What had started as propaganda was becoming something else. A story, a lesson, a revelation, and it was far from over. The 3rd day on Thalros 4 began with an emergency transmission from the Valorian flagship. Princess Aranya stood before the communication console, her silver eyes blazing with cold fury. "Commander Vexra," she said sharply, "I am receiving reports that you have requested orbital bombardment support. Explain." Vexra's face appeared on the screen, covered in dust and frustration. "The human is too difficult to track conventionally. A precision strike would violate the rules of combat," Aranya interrupted. "Rules that you established. Rules that the entire galaxy witnessed. Your Highness, this situation has gone beyond acceptable parameters. The only thing beyond acceptable parameters is your performance. 1 human has defeated most of your elite force, and now you want orbital support?" Aranya's voice was ice. "If you cannot complete this mission within the agreed terms, perhaps I should replace you." The threat hung in the air. Vexra's jaw tightened, but he could not argue. "Understood, Your Highness. We will proceed without orbital support." Aranya closed the channel and turned to her advisors. "Monitor all military channels. If any ship moves toward firing position, I want to know immediately." Back on Earth, Major Deho watched the exchange with grim satisfaction. He opened a secure channel to the UDF command. "The Valorians are breaking. Prepare diplomatic teams. When this ends, we will have leverage." On Thalros 4, Minho had found a moment of rest in an underground bunker. His body was exhausted, running on willpower and training. But he could not stop, not yet. 6 commandos were still hunting him, and 9 more were recovering. He checked his remaining supplies. Water was running low. Food was almost gone. Ammunition was critical, but what he needed most was information. He activated the commando radio he had salvaged from one of the captured soldiers. The Valorians had changed encryption codes, but their communication patterns were still revealing. He listened to their tactical discussions, learning their plans. "Converge on grid 7-7, Vexra was ordering. "The human has been sighted near the old chemical plant." Minho smiled slightly. He had not been near the chemical plant, but he had set up another decoy, knowing they would chase any lead at this point. While 6 commandos rushed toward false information, Minho moved in the opposite direction. He had one objective now, and this decisively. The trapped commandos were his advantage. 9 warriors stuck in various locations waiting for rescue. Vexra had to split his attention between hunting Minho and protecting his own people. Minho reached the location where 3 commandos were trapped in a loading bay. The heavy doors he had sealed days ago still held them inside. He could hear them working to cut through the metal with plasma torches. He did not try to stop them. Instead, he left a surprise outside the door, a simple device built from scavenged parts. When they finally cut through and opened the door, they would trigger it. Not an explosive, just a flashbang that would disable their sensors for critical seconds. Enough time for Minho to be somewhere else while they recovered. He moved to the next location. Then the next, At each trapped commando position, he left something. A distraction, a delay, nothing lethal, but enough to keep them from joining the hunt. By midday, Vexra realized what was happening. He is keeping us divided. Every time we try to consolidate forces, he strikes at our weak points. Then we need a new approach, one commando suggested. We need to make him come to us. Vexra considered this. Then his face hardened with determination. There is one thing that might work. He opened a channel directly to Minho, broadcasting on all frequencies. Human, I know you can hear this. I offer you terms. Surrender now, and Earth will be spared conquest. Refuse and we will forget the combat rules. We will bombard this moon from orbit and then move our fleet to Earth. In the underground bunker, Minho listened to the threat. His face remained calm. He had expected this. He is bluffing, Major Deho said over the Earth channel. The princess will not allow orbital bombardment. It would invalidate everything. Maybe, Minho replied quietly. But I cannot risk Earth on maybe. Princess Aranya heard Vexra's threat and immediately opened a private channel to Minho. Do not listen to him. I have forbidden any orbital action. He is desperate. Your Highness, Minho said with respect. Can you guarantee he will follow your orders? Aranya hesitated. In that moment of silence, Minho had his answer. Then I will end this, he said simply. He emerged from the tunnels at the northern edge of the complex. 6 commandos were searching for him 2 miles south. 9 were trapped or recovering. But there was one Valorian he needed to face directly. Commander Vexra. Minho broadcast on the open channel. You want me to come to you, I accept. Meet me at the central refinery. Just you and me. No weapons. Hand-to-hand combat. When I win, this ends. The command center on the flagship erupted in shocked conversation. Was the human insane? Vexra was 8 feet tall, genetically enhanced, trained for centuries. Minho was average human size, exhausted, wounded. It is a trap, an advisor warned. But Vexra was beyond caring. His pride had been destroyed by this human. He wanted revenge more than victory. I accept. All other commandos stand down. This ends now. They met at sunset. The central refinery was a massive structure of towers and pipes, surrounded by open ground. Vexra arrived in full armor. Minho arrived with just his combat uniform, no weapons visible. You are a fool, Vexra said, removing his armor. Underneath, he was massive, his enhanced muscles visible even through his tactical suit. I will break you. Then I will break your world. Minho said nothing. He just waited, balanced and ready. Billions watched across the galaxy. This was what they had waited for. The final confrontation, Vexra charged. His speed was incredible for someone his size. He swung a fist that could shatter concrete. Minho was not there. He moved aside at the last possible moment, letting the commander's momentum carry him forward. As Vexra passed, Minho struck at the nerve cluster behind his knee. Not hard enough to injure, just enough to disrupt his balance. Vexra stumbled but caught himself. He turned, more cautious now. You cannot win with tricks. I do not need tricks. Just skill, they circled each other. Vexra attacked again, using combat techniques refined over centuries. But Minho had studied the recordings of every Valorian fight. He knew their patterns, their preferences, their assumptions. The Valorians fought with power and precision. It was beautiful and effective against opponents who fought the same way. But Minho fought like someone who had spent his entire life fighting larger, stronger opponents. He used angles Vexra did not expect, strikes to places the commander had not protected. Movement that turned strength into weakness. The fight was brutal. Minho took hits that would have killed an ordinary human, but SAS training had prepared him for pain. He had learned to function through injury, through exhaustion, through conditions that would break most people. Vexra, for all his enhancements, had never really struggled. He had always been the stronger warrior. He had never learned to fight from a position of weakness. That was his downfall. 10 minutes into the fight, Vexra was bleeding from a dozen precise strikes. His movements were slower. His enhanced physiology was shutting down under the accumulated damage. Minho, despite his smaller size, was still moving with purpose. Tired, yes. Hurting, yes. But unbroken. The final exchange came quickly. Vexra threw everything into one massive attack, trying to end the fight with pure force. Minho stepped inside his reach, too close for the big swings to work. He struck 3 times in rapid succession. Solar plexus, throat, temple, not killing blows. but precise strikes that shut down Vexra's ability to fight. The Valorian commander fell to his knees, gasping for air. Minho stood over him, breathing hard. He could have finished it. Could have struck a killing blow. The entire galaxy watched, waiting to see what he would do. Instead, Minho stepped back. You fought with honor at the end. I will not take that from you. Vexra looked up at him, confusion and respect mixed in his expression. Why? Because this was never about killing you. It was about proving humans deserve respect, and respect is not won through cruelty. Minho raised his hand to the sky, signaling the watching fleet. It is over, I won. Earth remains free. On the flagship, Princess Aranya stood in silence. Around her, the command center was stunned into quiet. One human had defeated 30 elite Valorian commandos. Not through technology, not through superior force, through will, skill, and a refusal to compromise his principles. Bring him up, she ordered quietly. I must speak with this warrior. The Valorian shuttle descended through Thalros 4's atmosphere with Princess Aranya aboard. Her advisors had protested this decision. Meeting the human personally was unnecessary, possibly dangerous, but she had insisted. Some things required direct presence, not communication screens. The shuttle landed near the central refinery where the final combat had occurred. Minho sat on a piece of broken machinery, being treated by a UDF medical team that had been allowed to land. His injuries were being bandaged, his exhaustion was evident, but his eyes remained alert. Commander Vexra was being loaded onto a medical transport, unconscious but stable. The other Valorian commandos had been extracted from their various trapped locations. All 30 were alive, though many were injured. 0 fatalities on either side. This fact troubled Aranya more than any defeat could. The human had won completely while showing mercy throughout. This was not weakness. This was strength controlled by principle. She walked across the dusty ground, her royal guard forming a protective circle. Minho saw her approach and slowly stood, wincing from his injuries. He did not salute or bow, just stood and waited with quiet respect. Corporal Minho, Aranya said formally. I am Princess Aranya of the Valorian Empire. I wish to speak with you. Your Highness, Minho replied with a slight nod. How did you do this? She asked directly. Our commandos are enhanced. They have centuries of training. Technology beyond your world's understanding. Yet one human defeated them all. Minho was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. May I ask your Highness a question first? You may. How many of the worlds your empire conquered truly resisted? Aranya considered this. Most submitted after initial defeats. Some fought longer but were eventually overcome. They were afraid, Minho said. They saw your power and believed resistance was futile. So they surrendered. As logical beings should. Maybe. But humans are not always logical. We are stubborn. Every time our species faces extinction, we adapt. We have been invaded, starved, frozen, burned, and hunted by everything from animals to ourselves. We should have died out 100 times. We did not. Because you are resilient? Because we refuse to accept defeat? You cannot train that. You cannot engineer it in a laboratory. It is what happens when a species survives everything the universe throws at it for millions of years. Aranya walked slowly around the refinery courtyard, processing this. Your civilization is primitive compared to ours. Your technology is centuries behind. Your military is smaller and weaker. Yet you claim superiority? No, Your Highness. I claim difference. You conquer because you are strong. You fight because you want to expand your empire. We fight because we have to survive. That difference matters. Explain. Minho gestured to the ruins around them. Your commandos are elite warriors. The best your empire can produce, but they have always been the stronger force. They have always had better weapons, better armor, better numbers. They have never had to fight from a position of weakness. And you have? Every day of my life. I am not the strongest soldier. I am not the fastest or the smartest. But I learned to win anyway. That is what humans do. We find ways to survive even when we should not. Aranya stopped walking and faced him directly. You could have killed my commandos many times. Why did you show mercy? Because killing them would prove your assumptions correct. That humans are savage and primitive. I wanted to prove we are better than that. Strong enough to win, wise enough to show mercy. That is a dangerous philosophy in war. Maybe. But it is the only one worth fighting for. They stood in silence for several moments. In the distance, more shuttles were arriving to collect the wounded commandos. Medical teams moved efficiently, treating both Valorian and human personnel without distinction. I was taught that strength justifies conquest, Aranya said quietly, that superior civilizations have the right to rule inferior ones. I believed this without question. It is the foundation of my empire. And now I am questioning everything. She met his eyes. You have shown me that strength without wisdom is just violence. That true superiority is not about power, but about how that power is used. Minho nodded slowly. That is a difficult truth to accept. It is. Aranya turned to look at the sky where her flagship orbited invisible above the clouds. I will face consequences for what I am about to do. My father, the Emperor, will not be pleased. The military council will protest. But I cannot ignore what I have witnessed. What will you do? I will recommend that Earth be recognized as a sovereign system. That humanity be approached as equals, not subjects. That the Valorian Empire reconsider its approach to expansion. Your people will not accept that easily. No. But change never comes easily. Someone must be first to speak the truth, even when it is uncomfortable. Major Deho approached, having just landed with the Earth diplomatic team. He looked between the princess and Minho, sensing the weight of their conversation. Your Highness, Deho said formally. On behalf of Earth's United Defense Force, I thank you for honoring the combat terms. Major Deho, Aranya replied. Your corporal has taught me valuable lessons. I hope they are lessons my empire can learn as well. We hope for peaceful relations, Deho said carefully. But we will defend ourselves if necessary. I understand. And I respect that. Aranya looked at Minho one more time. You are a remarkable warrior, Corporal. But more importantly, you are a remarkable human being. Your species is fortunate to have individuals like you. I am just one soldier, Minho said simply. Earth has millions like me. We all carry the same determination. This statement seemed to impact Aranya deeply. Millions like you, she repeated softly. Then truly humanity is a force to be respected, not conquered. She turned to leave, then paused. I have one final question, Your Highness. If I had ordered orbital bombardment, ignoring all rules and honor, what would you have done? Minho's expression was difficult to read. I would have continued fighting, with whatever I had left, until the last moment, because that is what humans do. We do not surrender, we adapt. Aranya smiled slightly, though it was a sad smile. That is what I thought. And that is precisely why attempting to conquer Earth would be the greatest mistake my empire could make. She returned to her shuttle, her guards following. Before boarding, she transmitted a message to her fleet. All Valorian forces will withdraw from Earth's borders immediately. This demonstration is concluded. Prepare my ship for return to the homeworld. I must speak with the Emperor. On her flagship, the command center erupted in confused discussion. Withdraw, after being humiliated. The military council was outraged, but Aranya's authority was absolute in this matter. The fleet began preparations to leave Earth's system. Minho watched the shuttles depart. His body ached. His mind was exhausted, but he had done what was necessary. Earth was safe. For now. You changed her mind, Deho said quietly. A Valorian princess. That is no small achievement. I showed her the truth. She was wise enough to accept it. The Valorians will be back eventually. Maybe not to conquer, but they will return. I know, but next time they will come as equals, not invaders. That is all we can ask for. Deho placed a hand on Minho's shoulder. Come, let us go home. You have earned rest. As they walked toward the Earth transport, Minho looked back at the ruins one last time. 3 days, 30 commandos, one human who refused to quit. It would become a story told across the galaxy. The day humanity proved that strength was not about size or technology or genetic enhancement. It was about will, about refusing to accept defeat, about maintaining principles even under impossible pressure. Princess Aranya's shuttle broke atmosphere and returned to the flagship. She went immediately to her private chambers, ignoring the demands from her military council. She needed time to process everything she had witnessed. She activated her personal journal and began recording. I have seen something today that has fundamentally altered my understanding of power and civilization. The Valorian Empire has built itself on the principle that might makes right, that superior strength justifies conquest. But I met a warrior today who showed me a different truth. Strength without wisdom is merely violence. True superiority lies not in the ability to conquer, but in the wisdom to know when conquest is unjust. Humanity is not superior in technology or physical might, but they possess something we have lost in our centuries of easy victories. They possess the will to resist, the creativity to adapt, and the principles to maintain mercy even in victory. I will advocate for peace with Earth. My father will be displeased. The military will resist, but I cannot unsee what I have witnessed. I cannot ignore the truth that has been revealed. The human called Minho told me that his people fight because they must, while we fight because we want to. That distinction defines the difference between defense and aggression, between justice and tyranny. I hope the Valorian Empire can learn this lesson. If we cannot, then we will eventually face a force we cannot defeat, not because they are stronger, but because they refuse to be conquered. She closed the journal and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among them was Earth, a small blue world that had just changed the course of galactic history. 1 human, 3 days, a lesson the galaxy would never forget. 6 months passed like water flowing through ancient stone, slowly but inevitably changing. Everything it touched, the Valorian Empire's massive fleet had withdrawn from Earth's borders 3 days after the demonstration on Thalros 4. And the withdrawal was not celebrated as victory by the military council. It was seen as humiliation, a stain on their perfect record of conquest. But Princess Aranya's report to Emperor Talvor had been thorough and disturbing enough to warrant serious consideration. In the throne room of the Valorian homeworld, a debate raged that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. The Emperor sat on his crystalline throne, listening to arguments from both military hardliners and reformist voices. We should return with overwhelming force, General Cross insisted. Show these humans that mercy was a mistake. Conquer them completely. And lose how many ships? Aranya countered calmly. She had been stripped of her military advisory role but retained her position as princess. How many soldiers? If 1 human can defeat 30 of our elite commandos, what can 1,000,000 humans do? They are primitive. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Technology did not win that battle. Will did, and they have billions of people with that same will. The Emperor raised his hand for silence. He was old even by Valorian standards, his silver hair a mark of 3 centuries of rule. I have read your report, daughter. Multiple times. You believe humanity represents a fundamental challenge to our philosophy of expansion? I do, Father. They have shown us that conquest is not inevitable, that resistance is possible even against superior force. Already, other species under our rule are questioning their submission. This was the real problem. The broadcast of Minho's victory had spread across the galaxy faster than the Valorians could contain it. Species on conquered worlds watched a single human defeat an elite force through determination and skill. It gave them ideas. Hope on the mining world of Kelthra 9, workers began organizing resistance cells. On the agricultural planet of Vesrin, governors reported increased unrest. The Valorian Empire, which had maintained peace through overwhelming displays of power, was finding that one man's defiance had undermined decades of psychological dominance. We could suppress the rebellions, General Cross said. Show them what happens to those who resist. We could, the Emperor agreed. But at what cost? How many resources devoted to maintaining control? How many soldiers tied down fighting insurgencies? And all because we insisted on conquering a species that would not submit. He stood from his throne, a rare gesture that commanded immediate attention. I have made my decision. Earth will be recognized as a sovereign system. Humanity will be approached as equals for potential alliance, not conquest. Any military action against them requires my direct approval, which I will not give. The throne room erupted in protest from the military faction. But the Emperor's word was law. Furthermore, he continued, I am establishing a commission to review our expansion policies. Princess Aranya will lead this commission. We will determine if conquest is the only path for Valorian growth, or if there are alternatives. Aranya bowed deeply. Thank you, Father. Do not thank me yet. You will face opposition at every turn, but you have shown me something I had forgotten. That wisdom sometimes requires changing course, even when the current path seems easy. Back on Earth in a training facility in the Welsh Mountains, Corporal Minho was teaching a class of new SAS candidates. The rain fell steadily, turning the rocky terrain into a challenging obstacle course. 20 candidates struggled through the mud carrying heavy equipment. Speed is not the goal, Minho called out, his voice carrying across the mountainside. Efficiency is use the terrain. Work with your environment, not against it. One candidate fell exhausted. Minho walked over and helped him up. Rest when necessary. But know why you are resting. Know when to push and when to conserve energy. That judgment will save your life someday. Major Deho watched from the observation post. Minho had declined every medal, every promotion, every public appearance. He wanted only to return to his unit and continue his work. The UDF had honored his wishes, though they kept his identity classified. The galaxy knew Earth had an SAS operator who defeated the Valorians. They did not know his name or face. He is different now, a young lieutenant observed, more patient with the candidates. He understands the weight of what he did, Deho replied. Every human who wears a military uniform now carries that expectation. That we will not quit. That we will adapt. That we will maintain our principles even under pressure. Is that fair to them? No, but it is the truth. The galaxy is watching us now. We must live up to what Minho showed them. In space, at the neutral station Kepler 9, a different kind of meeting was taking place. Princess Aranya sat across from Earth's diplomatic representative, Ambassador Jiho. Between them was a simple table, no weapons, no guards present. Just two individuals trying to build something new. My empire is struggling with change, Aranya admitted. Your corporal's victory has inspired resistance across our conquered territories. We did not intend to destabilize your empire, Jiho said carefully. I know. But consequences do not require intention. We face a choice now. Suppress the rebellions with violence or accept that our empire was built on a flawed foundation. What will you choose? I will argue for reform, for releasing species that wish independence, for building alliances rather than conquests. But I am one voice among many. Jiho leaned forward. Earth stands ready to support peaceful reform. We do not seek the Valorian Empire's destruction. We seek only our freedom and the freedom of others who desire it. That is a generous position, considering we attempted to conquer you. Generosity is not weakness. Your commandos learned that on Thalros 4. We hope your empire can learn it as well. They continued talking for hours, laying the groundwork for what might someday become a true alliance. It was delicate work, building trust between former enemies. But both sides recognized the necessity. Across the galaxy, the ripples continued spreading. In universities, scholars studied the battle recordings, analyzing Minho's tactics. In military academies, his strategies were added to curriculum. On conquered worlds, his name became a symbol of resistance and hope. On the colony world of Breskin 7, a young alien named Torv watched the broadcast for the 100th time. His species had submitted to Valorian rule 20 years earlier without significant resistance. Now he wondered if that had been necessary. One human, he said to his companions. One small human against 30 enhanced warriors. And he won through intelligence and will. What are you suggesting? His friend asked nervously. I am suggesting that maybe we accepted defeat too easily, that maybe our freedom is worth fighting for. Such conversations were happening across dozens of worlds. The Valorian Empire's greatest weapon had always been the appearance of invincibility. Minho had shattered that appearance. Not through violence, but through demonstration that determination could overcome superior force. In the Valorian Military Academy, Commander Vexra stood before a class of young officers. His injuries had healed, though his pride bore permanent scars. He had been demoted but not discharged. The Emperor believed he still had value as a teacher. I lost to a human, he told the class bluntly. I was stronger, faster, better equipped. I had centuries of training. He was exhausted, wounded, and alone. Yet he defeated me and 29 of the finest commandos in our empire. The students shifted uncomfortably. This was not the usual lesson they received. I lost because I assumed strength guaranteed victory, because I believed our technology made us superior, because I forgot that war is not just about power. It is about will, strategy, and the refusal to accept defeat. He displayed images from the battle. Study this human. Learn from him. Because if we ever fight humanity again, we will face millions like him. And unless we change how we think about warfare, we will lose. Back on Earth, Minho finished the training exercise. The candidates had completed the course, exhausted but successful. He gathered them together for final comments. You are learning to be soldiers, he said, but never forget to be human beings first. Strength without mercy is brutality. Victory without honor is meaningless. You fight to protect, not to destroy. One candidate raised his hand. Sir, is it true you defeated 30 Valorian commandos? Mino was quiet for a moment. I did what was necessary for Earth's survival. Nothing more, Ma, but how? They were so much stronger. They were stronger in body. But strength comes in many forms. Mental strength. Emotional strength. The strength of principle and purpose. Those cannot be engineered or enhanced. They must be earned through experience and maintained through discipline. As the candidates filed out, Minho remained on the mountainside, looking out over the valley below. Rain continued to fall cold and steady. 6 months since Thalros 4, the world had changed. He had changed, but the core remained the same. He was a soldier. He had a duty, and he would fulfill that duty regardless of the cost. In her chambers on the Valorian flagship, Princess Aranya continued her work. She had established a secret communication channel with Earth's diplomatic corps, coordinating efforts to promote peaceful coexistence. It was dangerous work. If discovered by the military hardliners, she could face serious consequences.